what is this place? Really, is this an illusion? Are we all
You
dreaming?
mean this place, Earth?
Yeah, Earth.
Yeah.
Our loved ones are always just a thought away. Actually, when we think of them, we actually start to open the channel. Purpose in life, our reason for existing as souls is that we are helping God evolve because we're all part of God. And that's true for us. That love is the entanglement, it's the gravity that holds everything together. There's something called Deep Knowledge Meditation. But any religious or spiritual tradition that can't explain why we're here, why we are having this experience, is insufficient.
And people say, I would not have signed up for this. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Messages of Hope. I feel like the luckiest woman in the world when I get to talk to people who share my passion for the afterlife, for all things about the spirit world, about love, about who we are. And my guest today can certainly talk about those topics. His name is Matt McKay. He is an author. He is a shining light dad. You'll understand what that is before this show is over. And a clinical psychologist. So he has so much to offer all of us. I'd love to welcome him to the show right now. Matt, welcome.
Thanks so much. Glad to be with you, Suzanne.
Good to be with you. I know that I've had the opportunity to write an endorsement for two of your books, and they truly spoke to me. So it's just a pleasure to have you here. For those who don't know what a shining light father is, I don't know if you're familiar with the term, are you?
Yeah, I am.
You are. Okay. It's somebody who has a child across the veil. Would you like to start there or somewhere else?
I'm happy to start anywhere you want. A little over 15 years ago, my son Jordan was killed on the street. People were attempting to rob him, and he was shot and died at the scene. And at that, in the moment of learning that news, I think I wanted what anyone wants who's lost someone they love deeply, and first of all, to know, does that soul still exist, and also, is that soul okay? Are they okay where they are? And those are the just burning questions for me. And so, I started out seeking him and kind of, with mediums. Saw Felix Lerma in San Francisco, Austin Wells, wonderful medium, and I had the experience of hearing him through them, and it was reassuring, and yet the experience was incomplete because there was no dialogue. It was not possible to really have a conversation with him. Um, so the next thing I did was I went to visit Alan Botkin in Chicago, who discovered something called induced after death communication. It uses EMDR, which I use. I'm a psychotherapist. I work with trauma, and I use EMDR all the time. And he discovered a small variation by accident that induces people to actually hear or touch or see their deceased loved one, and it's a very powerful experience. And in that experience, I heard Jordan. He was there, heard his voice. He talked to me, and he said the things that I needed to hear, which is that he's with us, he loves us, he's engaged with us, he follows us, watches over us, and he's in a really good place. So that was really uh, some significant amount of the grief lifted at that point. Um, and then I consulted, this was the last thing I'll mention. I consulted Ralph Metzner, was the late Ralph Metzner, who was a specialist in the afterlife. And he taught me how to channel. And in the space of, I don't know, an hour or so, he went through the whole process with me. And I went home, and that very night, I had my first conversation with Jordan, and
Wow.
a powerful experience, and a very deeply emotional experience. And Jordan was saying things that really surprised me. And so I began these conversations. And over time, Jordan has chosen to write books or participate with me in writing books. He has things that he wants to say to folks who are still here. And and he sort of tasked me with bringing these things out and offering them to people. So that's where this book came from. And, initially, the first book was Seeking Joy, just the story of how I found him, and then Luminous
Great
Landscape,
book.
you know, was about, what is the afterlife? What is it? What does it look like? In great detail, and also ways to help us with the fear of death. And then Love and Time of the Permanence is really about how to get love into our lives. And really, really, he had lots of beautiful things to say. And this book, Lessons from the Afterlife, is really about, what is this place? Really, is this an illusion? Are we all
You
dreaming?
mean this place, Earth?
Yeah, Earth.
Yeah.
What is it, and why are we here? Why do we have the experience of being here? So he wanted to help people really explore that as well. So he's had a lot to say, and I've been very grateful to be given a chance to be part of it.
Does he drop in on you, or when you do these books, or do you set times to take notes?
So I usually meet with him once a week, and so we've had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of conversations over these 15 years. And but typically, what happens with these books is he'll just uh, in one of our conversations say, "All right, we're going to do this," and in the space of maybe 5 minutes or less, he'll outline the entire book. He just say, "Here's what it's going to be. Here's how we're going to do it. Here's the content what we're going to cover." And then for the next year or so, maybe when when I'm channeling with him, he will provide content for each part of the book. So it's and it's and it's surprising to me. I mean, he's telling me things that I don't know, that have never occurred to me before. And I
That's the test of good channeling, that it's information that you don't know. But you also have the feeling of his presence, which makes all the difference.
Yes, I feel his presence, and I feel his presence in my body as well, so that I have the physical experience of his presence as well as I'm getting channeled communications.
So, Seeking Jordan, you say it's more about how this came about and how you discovered you could talk to him. Do you actually share your process for how you connect with him, the channeling?
Yeah, I have. I have in several of the books, and including Lessons from the Afterlife. I have an appendix how to do it. I'm happy to describe it to your audience if you want. It's not terribly complicated.
I know, and that's what we all love to find methods of channeling. I've been channeling for years, and I remember reading your book and saying, "Yeah, that's how you do it." So, love if you summarize it for everybody.
Well, basically, what Ralph taught me and what I've done ever since is I start by getting into a place where I feel comfortable and at ease. I usually use the same place all the time uh, because you want to create a ritual. And but once in that place, it's very helpful to have something for eye fixation. Candles work really nicely. Just something to bring your attention to a central focus. And then I think it's helpful, very helpful to have an object that connects you to your loved one on the other side. Some something that either belonged to them or that they gave to you or that somehow represents them to you, and to have that object there as something to kind of anchor you.
You hold it or just have it present?
I have it present. I lean it up against the the candlestick that holds the candle. In this case, and actually for me, it's a little business card that Jordan had printed up and claiming that he's a CFO of a company. Of course, he was a teenager when he printed these up, and he would bring them to trade shows and get into the trade show with
Oh my gosh.
and it reminds me of his humor and his audacity, and so that's my little object that connects
Mm-hmm.
me to him. So once you've kind of settled in, you have eye fixation, you have that object. I just use a very simple breath focused meditation. There are other things you can do. You can do hypnosis, a little self hypnosis. You can prayer can be a way of connecting. But for me, the simplest thing is a breath based meditation. Just noticing the breath, bringing attention down to the breath, noting each out breath, 1, 2, 3, 4, counting them. And then when thoughts arise, bringing your attention back to the breath and just doing that. And I just do it until I feel centered and my thinking slows down a little bit and I can feel I'm starting to enter that receptive state. So, people can do it as much or as little as it takes to get into that receptive state. Then Ralph taught me a process of visualizing an orb the color of the sun just above your scalp. And as I visualize that and I think about Jordan and my love for Jordan, I actually start to feel some sense of him in my body. And then I imagine and visualize that orb elongating tube-like, and it becomes the channel and opens all the way to Jordan, wherever he is. And after the channel is open, you can begin the process. Now, I really encourage people, and this is what I do. I write everything down. I have a notebook, and I write down my first question, and then I wait, and I encourage people to actually then whatever the first word or words that show up telepathically from your loved one, just write that down, even if it doesn't make sense. Write it down, and wait till the next words or phrase shows up. Write that down. And then, usually there will be several sentences that sometimes in the beginning come very slowly. They kind of are kind of a staccato kind of process in the beginning, but until we get really comfortable with the channel opening. After it quiets down, and you're not hearing anything else, write your next question, and proceed with just listening telepathically to what shows up. And write everything down. And it's really important to write it down because one of the things that's been really helpful for me is, I forget. I mean, I've had hundreds of conversations with him, and he says important things to me that I forget. And I have the record in the notebooks of our conversations, which has meant a lot to me. So I encourage people to record and write down everything. And I think the act of writing it down is part of entering the channel for me, and I think for people I've taught, the actual watching the words take shape on the page keeps the channel open. And the last thing I just want to say is that our loved ones are always just a thought away. Actually, when we think of them, we actually start to open the channel, but we don't know it. We don't realize that the channel is opening as we think of them, and we just have the sort of this passive experience of missing them or loving them or something. But it can be an active experience just by the choice to do so and the choice to ask questions and begin a conversation and a dialogue. So I really encourage people to use those simple approaches and they work for many, many, many people. You don't have to be clairaudient. I mean, you're clairaudient, but I am not. And you don't have to be in order to get channeled or telepathic communication.
Well, I believe you probably are clairaudient, but may have a different perception of what it is. So how do you perceive the words that come through?
They show up telepathically in my mind.
Well, that's what I call clairaudience, because I'm not hearing a voice. It's just words in my mind. But it sounds like thoughts, but I don't even hear them. They're just there telepathically. So it's the same thing.
Yeah. And it's one of the things that really has struck me is that these communications show up in different ways. Sometimes it shows up as a download. It's just a whole knowing without any words. And one time Jordan laid out an entire therapy process, which later turned into a book, an entire therapy process in about 4 or 5 minutes, including images and all kinds of stuff. And then I had to go find the words to describe the process and sort of, put it together. And in other cases, it comes as this just very intense, rapid fire set of words that I can barely keep up with it through writing. And then sometimes in other cases, it's very abbreviated, very, very terse. And sometimes it's just images. And so these experiences show up in lots of different ways. And I want to encourage people to be kind of open to their particular way. And also their loved one has a particular way of communicating. And so, and to kind of go with that and adapt to it.
And I call those burst transmissions, the big thing that you talked about, downloads, burst transmissions. You had this experience very soon after your IADC experience with Alan Botkin, where you actually sensed Jordan's presence. Do you feel that that opened you to the ability to channel him?
I don't I don't think so. I mean, it helped me with the grief that the IADC. I mean, it was profound. I mean, I really heard his voice. He was there. I heard it as coming outside of me.
Oh, wow.
It's not an internal voice at all. It was definitely his voice in the room saying very specific things. Um, and that's how IADCs are. I do that same process. I do work with a lot of grieving people, and I do EMDR. I'm not as good as Botkin. Botkin has a very high percentage, 90 something percent of his people actually have an IADC, about 50% of my folks. But when you're witnessing that and you're there and the person is literally feeling the loved one touching and holding them, hearing them, seeing them, and you see the grief transform from deep loss into a sense of belonging and connection. I mean, it's such a beautiful thing. So, I mean, it's a great experience. I don't think it set me up necessarily for what Ralph taught me. I think Ralph taught me a totally different method. And that method for me was exactly what I needed. I mean, I was very moved and in some ways very healed in part by the IADC, but the ability to have a conversation, to be able to talk back and forth, to ask questions, to hear answers. And it was like, really, in many ways, like the hundreds and hundreds of conversations we had around the kitchen table when he was in life. And finally, I could have that experience again. And not only have the experience of these conversations, but the wisdom that he has of hundreds of lifetimes and all the knowledge that he has in the afterlife that he could bring and offer me, and also the people who've read the book. So it's been such a privilege, and I feel the relationship is so active. And you know, I want to say the thing that I think I've gotten most from all of this is the awareness that um, death has nothing to do with love. That the love continues, the relationship continues. It's just as strong, just as powerful, just as meaningful, and there's just as much support available in the relationship after death. And learning that has been the most important thing that I've ever encountered, I think, in my life.
This is such good information because so many people who watch this program, that's what they want. They want to have that connection again with their loved ones who have passed. Yet so many say, I can't feel them. I'm trying this. It's not working. Why do you think that might be? And could grief or other things be blocking it? Coming from a psychologist point of view and somebody who's doing it, this
Well,
practice.
you know, like, intense emotion can kind of get in the way of opening the channel. And, you know, we're so bereft, so deeply caught in the pain that we may not be listening very well. Um, and I think that can happen. But the other thing is that, you know, souls have different levels of experience. Some souls have had hundreds of lives, some souls have had a few. And the souls who are relatively young and kind of early in their career and development as a soul often are not very good at making contact with us. Um, and you know, so those spontaneous things like you know the signs and signals and you know the things that you know we look for, you know, dreams, the sense of the presence, and so turning lights on and you know putting certain songs on the radio, those kinds of things that you know some souls are just not very good at it, and others you know have had enough experience that they are more able to manipulate things in the world to help people get signs and signals.
It's such a good point. And I got distracted there because I was being told that's your mother, Suzanne. She was not had a whole lot of incarnations, and she never did understand the work that I do as a medium, and she could not grasp the afterlife, and I rarely hear from her. And that just really explains a lot, doesn't it? And yet there's your son who's sharing so much wisdom with all of us, who clearly has had many, many lifetimes
Mhm.
and is doing a great job of communicating. So I love that it takes the burden off of us to think that we're doing something wrong,
Yeah.
and that there usually is a very good reason and has nothing to do with how much they love us.
Nothing at all. The love is so, that's the thing that's, as I said, is the clearest and deepest wisdom that I've gotten, is that that love is eternal and powerful, and death has no dominion over it. It is not possible for death to diminish it in any way. And for us to, once we actually start to understand that, that the love is there, the channel is there. Oftentimes we can find ways to communicate, um, and so I encourage people to you know use you can use my method. I mean, there are variations on this theme, but use some method to find their way to the love.
Without a doubt. That's the number one goal, to show people that you can do this yourself. So I love when my guests share what I call NOEs, no other explanation moment than that this was your loved one across the veil. Now you have books full of channeled information, but does any incident stand out where you would say there's no doubt that that was Jordan doing that, or some sign that he sent, or some evidence, something like that?
Oh, there's been a lot of them. Well, this goes back early on, and I was reading his diary, one that he kept while he was living in New Zealand. And the diary talks about him feeling very isolated and feeling like he was sort of wearing a mask and so forth. And it kind of it really kind of worried, because this is not that long before he passed, and was he in a state of distress and so forth that I didn't know about. And a friend of mine, uh, then very close friend, had a dream in which he shows up in the dream, and he says, "Dad is worried about that I was wearing a mask,
Oh, wow.
and I want you to know that I was okay,
Oh, that's
and
great.
and that I moved through that and past that." But he's not able to hear me right now, so you're going to have to tell him. So I mean, that's an example. It makes me teary. I say it's an example of just this connection, and what it told me is that he's observing me and he's with me.
Yeah.
He's support, and then he's looking for ways to support me and guide me, and that has been just so powerful. And I guess the other thing there are a number of things that have really deepened my belief in Jordan's presence, but there are times where he's guided me and suggested things that never occurred to me, or didn't seem like something I really was ready to do, um, and yet when I did it, uh, invariably, uh, the outcome was extremely positive, and the outcome seemed to strengthen love between me and somebody else. And so his support and his guidance has been infallible, I would say. Um, and then of course the experience of him saying things that I know nothing about. You know, there's quite a bit of quantum physics in the lessons from the afterlife. I know nothing about that, and he has explanations of the origin of God. I mean, his position is the divine did not always exist, and that God continues to evolve, and that our purpose in life, our reason for existing as souls, is that we are helping God evolve, because we're all part of God, and we come here on a sacred mission to learn important things that get uploaded to God, and that God evolves because of all the work we do in connection to this physical world and all that we learn here. In particular, we're learning how to love in the face of pain, which is profound and important,
Yes,
because in the afterlife there is no pain.
that's
Love,
right.
love is just it's the experience. It's the air that you breathe. But here we have to earn love. We have to learn how to love in the face of all of these obstacles and the pain, which is profound and greatly adds to the wisdom, our own and to all.
Yeah. And people say, I would not have signed up for this.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, it's a very difficult planet. There's It's a very painful and difficult planet, and people think that if they're having pain, it means it's some sort of failure on their part. They've messed up somehow. They shouldn't be having pain. They should be having a good time.
Mm.
And if they aren't, so there's something wrong with them. And it's just the opposite. What Jordan has said to me anyway is that we come here in part because this is a difficult and painful place, and the teaches us. The
Yeah.
pain is our teacher, and from the pain we grow in ways it would not be possible otherwise. So that our sacred mission is to come to a difficult place and to learn from it.
Thank you, Jordan. Thank you, Matt. Yeah. Could not agree more with that. And everybody has that feel in your heart, even though the human side wants to kick and scream, it's truth, the capital T. Lessons from the afterlife. You mentioned that it talks a lot about what life like is here. What did I just say? You talk a lot about life on Earth, even though it's lessons from the afterlife. So
Yeah.
what you just talked right now, what this place is, what is the relationship between matter and energy? Because we see this as a physical reality.
Well, here's an example of something where he's describing things I know nothing about, but he claims that you know before before God, before consciousness, uh, there there was just this sort of this dark, uncharted nothingness. But in that place is something he calls primal energy, and it's always there. It's always waiting. It's potential.
Mm-hmm.
It's the potential for something,
Yeah.
and that exists in the dark void. And so, at some point, the and primal energy, one of its properties is it eventually starts to evolve. And so what happens is that primal energy eventually starts to produce new forms, and early on it starts to produce light, and then the light learns how to observe itself,
Yeah.
and that's the very beginning of consciousness, the very beginning of God, the divine is the light learning to. And from Jordan's point of view, light is consciousness. And so once energy evolves into some form of light, it becomes conscious, and then that light, that consciousness continues to evolve, and it continues to learn more and become more aware, and eventually, as a way of learning and growing, the the light or consciousness or all begins to produce physical things. Now, and how it does that, and we know, for example, that consciousness can impact what atoms do, and the movement of subatomic atomic particles.
Right.
Consciousness influence that. And so what happens is consciousness starts to influence the energy levels, and starts to and eventually parts of the energy process of the energy matrix rise above into particle form, rise above the energy mass into particle form. But it's done because consciousness activated it.
That's right.
Couldn't have been possible without consciousness. So, so it's true that all is the creator of the universe, but all was not always there. All of it, developed out of the primal energy and early forms of light, and then began to create physical matter out of that energy, and the matter then becomes an opportunity for all to learn more, and all sends us into this material universe to learn. The example Jordan says is like a dad can build a playhouse for his kid, but he can't really get inside it to experience it.
Mhm.
He has to send the kid into the playhouse to actually experience what it's like to be in there.
Oh,
Uh,
great example.
and the other thing is that all can understand, for example, the concept of grief and the concept of grief. but all can't actually experience grief, and all has to send us into the universe to experience loss and impermanence, and through us understands grief. We teach all about what grief really feels like, and a whole lot of other things, and we teach all about it by virtue of our participation in and interaction with the physical world and all that it teaches and all that it takes from us, all the ways that we lose in the face of the physical universe. All of that is teaching us things that all could not learn any other way.
Beautifully said. What has been the most surprising thing you've learned from Jordan? There are probably several, so how about top three?
um, hmm. I I think one of the things that's been most interesting to me is the role of love in the universe. I mean, he describes love as sort of, I think I said this, the atmosphere that we breathe in the afterlife or in the spirit world. I mean, everything is connected by love. Love is the entangles everything. It keeps all of consciousness together. It makes consciousness one. And also, what he says is that it's a paradox because consciousness, we're all part of all, we are one, but at the same time, we're separate and individual and on our own individual journey of learning and growing and evolving. Uh, so, so that so it's a very interesting, uh, I don't know, dialectic, I guess, that both things are true. We are separate and we are united. But the other thing he talks about in terms of love is that, and love is the affinity things have for each other. Um, and souls are internally entangled by love. And so, in the same way that we know things, subatomic particles that were once joined, they can be separated by billions of miles. And if you do something to one of those subatomic particles, it affects the other one billions of miles away. So once joined, they're entangled, and that's true for us. That love is the entanglement; it's the gravity that holds everything together, the physical universe and the spirit world. All is held together by the gravity of love, and that just is it's just so interesting to me that this is the power that keeps everything running, and keeps us
Yeah.
all together. Um, and it's kind of mysterious because I think we think of love as like falling in love or some kind of emotion. Um, but love is, in Jordan's view, it's awareness, it's seeing it, and once you see something, it's the attraction that binds you to it. So love is sort of awareness, seeing, observing, knowing, and then being bound to whatever you see, observe, and know.
Mm.
And the whole universe is held together by love. The planets go around the sun. The galaxies are all moving through love. That is the relationship to consciousness. And so to me it's kind of complicated, but in another way it's very simple. It's this one thing holds everything together, and we can learn how to tap into it, and we can strengthen our relationships to each other and to all and to the universe by strengthening our sense of love.
Amen. I don't know what else to say to that because it's just all of this. I just sit here and I soak it up like a sponge. This is what I hope everybody else just lives and breathes this kind of information. How has it changed you in the last decade?
I One of the things that Jordan has taught me and keeps emphasizing, because I sometimes forget it, is that we our lives are made up of moments of choice, and really, um, spirituality and acts of love are behaviors, not feelings. It's what we do. And so every day, all through the day, we have moments of choice. And the moment of choice shows up, when you're having a strong emotion or a strong desire, or when you're in pain. And there are other situations that offer moments of choice, and they show up all day long. Many of them occur in our relationships with each other. And what he's taught me is to, first of all, it's so important to be aware of those moments of choice, to try to pay attention. He teaches me this little meditation every morning to remind me that all throughout the day, I'm going to be aware of the moment of choice. And at the moment of choice, I will be loved. And I'm committing that myself to that every morning. And he keeps encouraging me to do that, so that my life is about love, but not as an abstract idea, but as something that gets enacted at every moment of choice of every day. And by moments of choice, I don't mean like, oh, what am I going to do for a living, or where am I going to live? Right? No, the moments of choice are, my partner just hurt my feelings, and I could act on anger or resistance or defensiveness, or I could act on love. And those are choices that show up. Or I come home from work and I'm tired and exhausted and I'm anxious because my boss said something bad, and my kid suddenly needs me and my attention, for their own struggle or their own pain. And the moment of choice is, I give into my tiredness or my anxiety, I withdraw, or I act on love and I find the energy and the commitment to engage with my child. So these moments of choice are just showing up all day long.
Mm.
And he keeps reminding me that I have to pay attention to them and commit to noticing them, and then commit to bringing love to those moments, instead of what my emotions want me to do, or whatever else my ego wants me to do. So I
Would
think,
you say that is because it's why we're here? Is it that profound?
yeah, because that's what he says. We're here to learn how to love in the face of pain. That's the big, um, lesson plan for all of us. And then each of us has a particular lesson plan of things that we're working on as a soul. That we're developing certain skills, or
Mm-hmm.
developing certain, um, abilities, and or enacting certain things that the planet needs on some level, or the people around us need. So we have our individual purpose and lesson plan, but we also have this overarching purpose about about learning how to act on love in the face of all the difficult, and
So the overarching one, of course, is the most important. But then as you talk about that, I can hear the listeners saying, so how do I know what my purpose is? Which is what so many people ask. What did Jordan say about that?
well, there's a couple of ways to do it. One is to channel with a close loved one on the other side who knows a lot about you, uh,
That's great.
particularly somebody that is probably in your soul group, or has known you for countless lifetimes, and with whom you have an enduring, loving relationship in the afterlife. So that's one way to get information. Um, but another way is to use, something called Deep Knowledge Meditation, which is, it's really a form of channeling, but it's channeling your soul, your higher self. It's channeling the part of your soul that always remains in the spirit world. And I know you know this, but as you know, part of our energy always remains in the spirit world, even when we incarnate. Some of our energy separates and enters the body, but some of our energy always remains in the spirit world. Yours is there, mine is there. Your
Could I just say that I don't feel that it actually separates because nothing can be separated, but maybe partitions off. How's that?
I I I think that's a better
Okay.
phrase, really. It's partitioned off, but it's partitioned off because the energy that comes here often goes through, or usually goes through, a state of amnesia, where we lose awareness of the things that we know, and that the things that the other partitioned off part of us that remains in the spirit world knows. But we can access the part of us that is in spirit always,
Always.
and the knowledge and wisdom of that part of us. And it's a simple meditation. And it's I encourage people to do it to solve problems, to make decisions, and to get information that they need. Um, so all of this collective wisdom of many lifetimes is there, and it's available to us. So the deep knowledge meditation is again just bringing your attention to your diaphragm, to the breath, to the center of your body, and again watching the breath. Usually for a deep knowledge meditation, I don't do the counting out breath. I'll just do like Thich Nhat Hanh says, in on the in breath, out on the out breath. Just note the breath in and out. But paying attention to the breath and noting it is, I think, really important. Um, and continue to bring the attention into that center part of the body. And when thoughts arise, let them go and return to the breath. Thoughts arise, let them go, return to the breath. Now, at a certain point, in the same point where you would begin to open the channel, where you would begin to, um, you know, prepare for connecting and talking to a loved one. At that very point, you ask the question that you wanted answered. Yeah, and so you've gotten to that receptive state, and now the address for this question isn't a loved one in the afterlife. It's your own soul, your own higher self. And so we send the question to the higher self, and then we wait for how the answer shows up. And we talked about this before. It can come out as a download, just knowledge without words. It can come out as a whole lot of verbalization. It can come out as just a few brief words. It could come out as an image, a picture, a symbol. There are lots of ways that it will show up, but it will usually show up if we give it a little bit of time and just be patient and allow whatever our higher self wants to convey to come in the form, whatever form it is. So the deep knowledge meditation, and it's something that I encourage people in this book, Lessons from the Afterlife, to use their own deep knowledge meditation in response to things Jordan says, and to come to some of their own truth. It's not, not to just say, okay, well, Jordan said it, so it must be true. It's like, well, wait a minute, that's just a beginning to explore or look at something. Let me see if I can find my own truth, my own experience, and my soul's higher knowledge. And you can use the deep knowledge meditation to start encountering that, and you may find that your own soul has some different perspectives, and that's good. That's fine. Um, and it's honoring your own history, your own knowledge, your own wisdom, and I think that's important for people to start learning how to do.
A beautiful practice, and you make it very easy, and it is. I think some people think it has to be a lot more complicated. I teach a lot of classes and mediumship and help people can connect on their own, like we've been talking about. And the vast majority, usually 89% of my students and participants are women. And it would be great if you would just talk to the guys here and say, explain to the women why there aren't more men in those classes.
Yeah, I think the thought I have is that men are often afraid of their own spirituality, and on some level, and they're afraid of something that seems irrational or unscientific, and so they kind of resist it. And the other thing that happens, I think, is sometimes men who participate in a certain religious um, life or religious organization get caught in the cosmology of that religion, the belief system of that religion. And, like I have a client who recently came to me, actually his husband and wife, and she wanted to learn how to channel her recently deceased son. And he said, well, I'm here to support her, but I don't do that kind of thing because I'm a Christian and I don't believe. I think the only person you can talk to is God. You can't talk to the dead. We don't believe in that. So these belief systems, uh, either a scientific belief system or a religious one, can sometimes get in the way. And I think men are sometimes a little bit more vulnerable and susceptible to that than women. I think women
Hmm.
have more flexibility.
So what do you have to say to them?
To the men,
Hmm.
what I say to people is, well, try it.
Hmm.
It's like, see what the experience is like for yourself. One of my mentors in the world of psychology often said, well, what are you going to believe, your mind or your experience? And so, yeah, okay, your mind says that this won't work, or this is uh, hokum. And so your mind is saying that. On the other hand, you have this beloved person on the other side, and you have this deep need to connect and to reestablish the love and the connection between you. So why not try it and see what the experience yields for you? Because it could change your life. I mean, I'm a scientist. I've done, lots of randomized controlled trials, and I developed 5 different psychotherapies that are being used around the world. And so I believe in science. But I also have to believe that there's something beyond science, or allow myself to accept that there's something beyond science and something that science can't measure. We can't measure the communications to the afterlife. We can't measure. There's nothing we can do to really confirm it. But on the other hand, the experience, it can be so powerful, so meaningful, so moving that it begins to open us in a way uh, that our minds would not ordinarily permit us to do.
Yeah. Beautiful. I'm really glad we talked about that. Very important. How do people find out more about your work, your books, website?
Well, there's a website called Seeking Jordan, but if you're interested in the books, you just go on any place books are sold, and there are the Jordan books are there. The original book, Seeking Jordan, has gone out of print, but it's going to be put back in print next year.
Oh,
But all
good.
the other ones are in print. The luminous landscape of the afterlife, again describing what the afterlife is like and helping us prepare for death. Love in the Time of Impermanence, which really looks at how do we hold love in the face of everything that we're losing everything all the time. How do we build love into our lives? And then lessons from the afterlife of why are we here, and what is this place? So those are the things that Jordan has been teaching, and I've just been privileged to be the instrument for which he has so much to say.
And a very clear instrument. Before we wrap up, is there anything we haven't covered that you might regret that we didn't talk about?
Well, one of the things that I think might be worth talking about is, what is the nature of reality? There
Mm.
are, there's all these non-dual traditions that are kind of suggest that, the reality we experience is an illusion, or it's a dream, um, or we're just separate dreamers all having illusion, or we're just phantasms in the mind of God. That this place isn't real in that sense, uh, and that's, I think it's a very dangerous idea. And Jordan says the same, that the material world is real. It was created by consciousness and all for consciousness to evolve and grow, and that we come here uh, at the behest of all, so that we can grow and help consciousness grow. And it's a sacred purpose and sacred mission, and the reality around us is shared so that we can learn together. I mean, the example that Jordan uses is like, okay, so how does a pitcher learn to pitch? Well, you know, first of all, you have to live in the same environment as other pitchers. The vectors of force and wind and gravitational pull and spin and release point, all of these things that help us pitch a ball. We have to learn it in an environment that's consistent. We're living in the same world the same um, rules, and And so you couldn't learn to pitch if you weren't in the same world and in a physical world that was consistent and real.
Hmm.
Uh, and and you couldn't learn to grieve unless you were in a world in which other people had that experience and modeled for you, what grief is and what it feels like and how to do it. Everything we learn because we share this experience together. This is not an illusion. This is not a dream. This is not something that's just inside our head. This is a very real place, and we're here for a very crucial and sacred reason.
Yeah.
And that's something I really feel like he's really wants to get clear, that you know um, people, and any, let me say this is maybe kind of, I hope this is not too controversial, but any religious or spiritual tradition that can't explain why we're here, why we are having this experience, is insufficient. So really knowing why we're here and what this is about and why we share this experience and why we have all this pain, being able to answer that question is essential. And that's why I think Jordan wanted to write this particular book.
And you've done it very well just in this short time that we've been talking together. So diving into the books and feeling that energy is very helpful as well. Wow. Well, I know that you two chose each other as a team because you're not just the scribe. You listen well, you have the commitment, and I really appreciate you coming and sharing all of this with us today.
I so enjoyed talking to you, Suzanne.
Always, always. Bye, everybody. See you back here next week.